everyone hear me? Is that coming through? Okay, great. Hello, and welcome to our latest forum in our Issues That Matter series. Tonight, our topic is Protecting Arkansas's Waterways, a deep dive into adventure. This series is presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and KUAR FM 89.1. I'm Danielle Absorda. I'm on the leadership team for the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and I'll be leading tonight's discussion. This live forum is being simulcast via Zoom and YouTube and will be recorded for a later broadcast on KUAR with air dates to be announced. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to thank both the Central Arkansas Library System and KUAR for partnering on this event. I would also like to give a brief explanation over the format for this conversation. We will be asking our panelists a variety of questions, but we also want to hear from our viewers. If you have a question, please use the question and answer function on Zoom to ask it, or for those with us live this evening, please use the question card circulated by the League representatives when you came in. Someone on our team is also monitoring our Facebook and YouTube streams, so if you're watching through Facebook and leave a question there, we should see those as well. All of our participants received the topics and questions ahead of time so they could prepare for our conversation. For each question asked, participants are free to answer questions and comment on others' input, and then we'll move on to the next question. Please help me welcome our participants to this forum. We've got Watchable Wildlife Coordinator for the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, Kirsten Bartlow, representative from the Arkansas Canoe Club, Debbie Doss, and from the Corps of Engineers Program Support Branch Office, Devlin Reitenauer. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start in the order I introduced you, but I'll switch it up every time. So first we'll start with Kirsten, and then I'll do Debbie, and then Devlin. And then we'll kind of round back to the beginning. And I want to start by asking you all to just tell us a little bit about yourselves, the organization you're representing this evening, and what you do to conserve waterways for recreational use. And we'll start with you, Kirsten.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, I'm Kirsten Bartlow, and I work for Arkansas Game and Fish Commission and have since 2000. So I moved here after growing up in Kansas City and thought I'd stay a couple of years, and it's been about 22. So obviously fell in love with Arkansas, and a big part of falling in love with the state was all the beautiful waterways we have, and lakes and rivers and streams and bayous. So, the Game and Fish Commission, our job is managing fish and wildlife in their habitats and getting the public involved in that, in conservation and being supporters of it. So, and water is such a huge part. I mean, we all need water. Fish and wildlife needs it. We need it. It needs to be healthy for all of us. So that's a big part of what we do at Game and Fish. And specifically at my job, one component is developing water trails around the state. So places for people to go paddling. And places that many of us don't know about. We all know, hey, the Buffalo River is there, but there's a lot of neat bayous and places in the Delta that we're not familiar with. So that's just one part of my job. And I feel fortunate to, as my parents say, when are you going to get a real job? So lucky me, I get to play a lot of days and help encourage other people to get out and play and learn about wildlife and get involved in conservation.
My name is Debbie Doss, and I'm listed here as representing the Arkansas Canoe Club, and I feel like I can do that pretty well because I was the conservation chair of the club for 17 years, and they have a new chair now for that conservation position, and that is John Fletcher. He's a great guy. Y'all join the club and get to know that group of people. It's a large group. It's about probably close to 2,000 people are members of the club in the state, and we have chapters outside the state too. At the moment, after I left the canoe club, I'm still a member. I'm a lifetime member, so I always will be. But I started my own nonprofit called Arkansas Water Trails Partnership, and I did that because I saw a need for the kind of recreational trails that a lot of other states have that for some reason we didn't have in this state. And so I work a whole lot with Kirsten. We've been working together on that for many years. When I was with the Arkansas Canoe Club, and I still probably do some of that today, I work to we were involved in all kinds of different issues. When I first started, we stopped a dam on Lee Creek, which is one of the most pristine streams in the state in western Arkansas. And I worked on getting improved regulations on oil and gas fracking when that was at boom. There was a lot of damage and erosion and pollution of streams and stuff going on along with that, and because it all came in so fast, so we had to scramble to get some good regulations in place, and I think we did that pretty well. And then I also worked on the Arkansas State Water Plan, working on water quality and issues for that to make sure with others that those were included in our state water plan. But the Arkansas Water Trails Partnership is, a lot less politically intensive, but all those things matter to our streams. They're all important. So I still feel like that I'm doing a lot for Arkansas and the environment, and we try to teach people. Education's a big part of it for me now with social media. We talk about leave no trace ethics, and my husband, who has a portion, I call it a sub organization to Arkansas Water Trails Partnership. He calls it ACC Boater, and it's ACCBOATR, and that stands for Arkansas Canoe Club Black Ops Trash Removal. So what he primarily does is go around to different streams, and I help some. We put on boats and we pick up trash, and we encourage, we try to set a good example, and we encourage others to do the same.
All right. I'm Devlin Ridenauer. I work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I've been with them for 31 years, in the Little Rock District for 13 years, but only on my current job for 3.5 weeks, so I'm still learning this job. But some of the primary efforts that the Corps does to protect the waterways is through our shoreline management plans and by monitoring the boundary lines around our waterways. So our shoreline management plans provide for the protection and conservation of the environmental characteristics of the shoreline, but also tries to maintain a balance between the public and private shoreline uses. And throughout the district, we have 10 lakes in Arkansas and over 300 river miles. We also have 2 lakes in Missouri, in southern Missouri.
Great, thank y'all so much. The second question is, in the central Arkansas area, what do you think is the greatest threat to recreational waterways, and what can citizens do to continue to advocate for their preservation? And we'll start with Debbie.
Oh, okay. I get that first. Okay. There are a lot of threats to our streams, and they're still the same. I think, the environmental threats are erosion, pollution, lack of access to streams, all those things that I worked with as the conservation chair. And we're seeing a lot of trash on streams now as more and more people get out. So there is another big problem. I think best way to help with that, what citizens can do, and there are just a lot of things, is mainly be engaged, get to know your agencies, like Game and Fish, and like the Corps, and like Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. There are others. You see things, report things that you think are not quite right. You can find all of those on the internet. And as a member of ACC Boater, one thing that I would like to see people do is just pick up some trash. It's something everybody can do individually. We have these giant cleanups, and everybody comes out, you know, there's like a big cleanup once a year, or maybe twice a year if you're lucky, and 100 people come out and everybody picks up a little trash, and those are great for awareness and all of that. But what I'd like to see is for all those conscientious people out there to, every time you go out, you know, pick up 3 pieces of trash. You know, don't just walk by the stuff in the parking lot. Pick up a small bag of trash everywhere you go, whenever you go out, especially if you're going out, you know, into nature on a trail or something like that. That would be great.
Thanks. Devlin?
All right. So a couple of things came to mind when I was reading this question, and depending upon the location, one is the population growth and development around our waterways, and another is invasive aquatic species. Around some of our popular lakes, the increase in population and development does have a negative impact on the natural environment, and it also creates congestion on and around the water. And then the growth of invasive species can quickly have a negative impact for recreation as well as other uses of the waterway. And I would say a good way for the public to get involved related to the Corps of Engineers is during our updates to our master plans around our projects and our shoreline management plan updates. The Corps routinely updates those plans at each of our lakes and rivers projects, and so the public comment and interaction is integral in developing those updates and maintaining good use of those facilities. And I would say currently the master plan update along our facilities on the Arkansas River is just getting started. So this fall there should be some public workshops and comment periods that the public could get involved for the Arkansas River.
Thank you.
Okay, we're all sitting here in Little Rock, so I think I'm going to use Fish Creek as my example. You know,
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's earned the nickname sometimes Flush Creek because it collects. It's our watershed, and it collects 73% of Little Rock's surface area. You know, the water and everything that runs in with that water ends up in Fish Creek. So it's over 100,000 acre beautiful bottomland wetland area that could be this amazing park and water trail and have all kinds of wonderful things for our city, and we're working toward that. But if you ever, some of you are nodding your heads, which makes me think you've been out on Fish Creek. It is amazing in a not great way, some of the rafts of trash that you see. So, you know, it can be balls off, you know, playing fields, lots of styrofoam and bottles and just a lot of stuff. So I think for us, that's a great little example of how easy it would be for each of us. You know, Debbie's talking about picking up trash. Just, you know, people, I watch sometimes we may pick up after our dogs as we're going along the street, and then we throw it down the storm drain. I'm like, where does that go? It goes to the river. So just start, you know, educating yourself about, you know, things that fly out of the back of your truck, or what you do with your dog waste, or even, you know, what kind of things you're putting on your lawn that eventually washes down into our beautiful Fish Creek that isn't as beautiful as it used to be. The Central Arkansas Master Naturalists are a wonderful group that are going out all the time. The Canoe Club and Debbie and Cooper did it before, but they're pulling out a lot of this trash. We have a trash boom in place.
But it's a never-ending job.
It's never ending, but if we all did our little part and had, you know, take some real pride in where we live in this neat city, in this neat watershed that we have. So Fish Creek is a special place with beautiful cypress trees. There's wonderful wildlife viewing and fishing and paddling and all kinds of things to do there. So, and by the way, when Debbie talks about picking up trash, you all really should get involved with their trash pickups. I mean, they'll paddle a dumpster out of a river and do, you know, the bigger the challenge, the better. So anyway, Fish Creek is a neat spot though.
And yeah, and that reminded me too, when you're talking about government agencies and people to you know, harass Little Rock, harass the city of Little Rock, just a little bit, you know, say, we'd like to have this big, fabulous, wonderful bottomland park with a water trail and a hiking trail in South Little Rock. let's do something about the trash.
Thank you. And this is my little disclaimer. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Issues That Matter, Protecting Arkansas's Waterways, a deep dive into adventure. This series is presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and KUAR FM 89.1. This virtual forum is being recorded for broadcast and will air at a later date on KUAR. So for our next question, how does your specific organization work to manage recreational waterways in sustainable ways? How can citizens find out about the waterways you manage and how to responsibly and legally use them? And Devlin, you're first up for that one.
So as I mentioned earlier, our shoreline management plans help provide the protection and conservation around our shoreline while maintaining that balance between the public and private shoreline use. And we also have a regulatory division. It's separate from where I work, but they work to protect the nation's aquatic resources and navigation capacity. But they also give consideration for reasonable development. And to find out more information about the projects that we operate in the Little Rock District, there's a couple websites. I've put them here. I don't know if the camera can see them, but the first one is our district website, and you can go on there and identify the particular project lake that you're looking for and see that. And then the second website is a more national website where you can actually make reservations for campsites and other facilities for federal facilities.
And we'll make sure those links end up as comments on the YouTube and in the attached to the online KUAR stuff. So to make sure people have access to that.
We on to me?
Yes.
Okay. As I said, part of my job is helping develop water trails around the state. So if you're interested in neat places to go paddling, like I said, that maybe you've never heard of before, just go to agfc.com and search water trails. So we develop places, a lot of them are in flooded timber, so it's going to be like you're on a nature trail, but you're floating along with cypress, ancient cypress and tupelo trees, and we mark those routes. All the information's on our website on how to get to them. We have geo-reference maps, because swamps are a good place to get bad lost, so we try and give you all the tools you need to get out there and enjoy wonderful wildlife viewing, wonderful fishing opportunities, so we're developing more around the state. Debbie and I were just up at Hurricane Lake WMA, which is north of Bald Knob, and we're next week going to start working on more trails in that WMA. So, you know, the Game and Fish Commission and our other partners want to get people out onto these areas, learning about the conservation work we do and getting folks involved. Arkansas Stream Teams is another program that Game and Fish coordinates, and we have stream team coordinators around the state. And one of the neat things they do is help landowners that may have a stream that runs through their property that's degraded. It's, you know, has major erosion issues and that sort of thing. And we can help financially with that, with technical advice on restoring those stream banks, getting trees planted, and stopping that erosion. So that's a really neat program. And they do a lot of other things too. They do education and outreach, but the Stream Team program is another one through Game and Fish. And then there's multiple organizations involved in the Arkansas Stream Heritage Partnership Program. And that's a program that works on finding dams that are no longer doing what they were intended to do. Maybe they're close to failure, maybe, you know, landowners don't want them there anymore, and we work on getting those removed. So we can restore the ecology of the stream. Fish and mussels and all the critters that live in that stream can migrate and move what they need to do. To take out some dams, you know, they're dangerous for us. If they fail, what happens? If you want to navigate that stream and it has a dam in it. So those are a few of the programs that we do at Game and Fish to help with stream restoration and the ecology of streams.
For those who don't know, what is a WMA?
Oh, I'm sorry. My goodness.
okay.
I know. I've been taught not to use acronyms, but I work for the government. It's hard not to.
Yeah,
So they're wildlife management areas. That's what Game and Fish, those are the public lands that we manage, or yes, wildlife management areas. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I'm the only one here who's not a government agency, so I don't do anything really to manage the areas that I work on. I follow the guidelines that are given by our wonderful agencies here. And I have a website, ArkansasWaterTrails.com. The Canoe Club has a website, And we do most of our traffic on Facebook, so there's a site for the Canoe Club on Facebook, and I also have an Arkansas Water Trails partnership site on Facebook, in which I try to spread as much good information as I can. I post trips and will lead trips if you have a canoe or kayak or something and you want to get out there and see some of these places. I help to do, I can help facilitate that. Other than that, these guys and a lot of the other agencies, both state and federal, that I've worked with, different ones all over the state, and they are fabulous, and they don't get nearly enough praise for what they do, and they have all kinds of ways to interact with the public in a very positive way, and they're lonely. Mainly they hear from troublemakers. So what I would encourage you to do is go to their various websites of your state agencies and just look at their resources and what they have to do, and you can find all kinds of ways that you can help. That's my 2 cents.
I like it.
Thanks. What impacts, both positive and negative, does recreational use have on our waterways, and what can we do to mitigate those negative impacts? You're up.
I'm in the hot seat here.
You are.
Well, I like to lean towards the positive. So, for us to want to conserve and protect things, we have to know it and love it. So we want people to be out in our woods and on our water and recreating and being involved. So that's the positive. You need to have an intimate relationship with the natural world to care about it. So I want other people to get out and enjoy it. But as we all know, sometimes things go awry there. So there are areas that we love to death. We're all piling in to Pinnacle Mountain or the Buffalo River or whatever it may be. So sometimes it's like we're working on trying to get people spread out to other parts of the state, so we're not concentrating all of our use in one area. We try, at these agencies like Game and Fish, to use education to get folks to act right, but sometimes that doesn't work, and we've got to have, laws put in place. I think a really great set of laws we have at Game and Fish are for canoes, kayaks, and paddle boarders. There's some laws that when you get into your canoe or kayak and you get out on the water, if you have a cooler, you need to have it strapped shut, because there's a great word in Arkansas I learned 22 years ago when I moved here. You're going to tump at some point.
That's the word.
And when you tump, your cooler full of whatever beverages ends up in the river. So we have some great laws like strap those coolers shut, and another great one is no glass. If you're going to drink your beverages, make sure they're in aluminum. If you got a beverage, have it in a koozie. And you've got to have a trash container, some kind of, the big mesh bags or whatever to put your beverage containers in. So, education is my preferred way. But we also have a whole set of wildlife officers that work at our agency that will, write tickets and that sort of thing. So most of them try and be nice about it. But anyway, yeah, we want folks out, falling in love with the natural state. It's a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm. It's job security too. But everything that Kirsten said, I can't add too much to that. We really want people to get out, not just for the benefit of those beautiful places that we love, but we want to really have some people to share that experience with, because once you get out and you start to see what we have here, it will really enrich your life. We live in such an angry world right now, and I think getting outdoors and communing with nature a little bit would help all of us.
It's good for the soul, huh?
It is.
I bet we're preaching to the choir right
Yeah, we probably, unfortunately, that's what I'll usually end up doing, is preaching to the choir, but I'd like to spread the message to more people. I don't know if I had any Well, I've talked to some of the people in, on some of these public lands, and they don't want to have to make laws that restrict people. It would be great if people would just act the way they should, and, you can treat their place as like you would your own home. But as we know, there are a lot of people who don't do that. And those of you that do, just, be aware of that and try to set an example yourself. And, hopefully, things will change.
All right. Yeah, I agree. The positive impacts of recreation use is the increased public awareness, and I think once people get out and start enjoying the natural resources, they feel more of a personal stake in the management of them in a sustainable way, and perhaps that personal awareness and personal responsibility is the best mitigation or even prevention of negative impacts. So I agree.
Yes.
Awesome. So what specific factors make a waterway a good candidate for recreational use, and how is it important do you think the maintenance of recreational waterways is to Arkansas's tourism reputation as the natural state? I feel like you kind of answered some of that already, but if you have something to add.
Are we on me?
I think we are on Debbie first.
Oh. Okay. The question was, say again?
Sure. What specific factors make a waterway a good candidate for recreational use?
Well, the natural beauty, of course. If this is a place that people are saying, wow, you ought to see this place, it's gorgeous, it's pristine, it's beautiful, there's lots of wildlife, and you can listen to the birds all day, and it's a great place to spend time. But there are other things too that are important to make a good water trail. We've kind of started out with the low-hanging fruit of going to public lands because there's available access. If you have to cross an area where it's illegal to cross, or there's not a boat ramp, there's not something where you can access the river or the stream or the lake, then then you have to sort out those kinds of problems before you get started on building a water trail. It's good to have a local access to a pool of volunteers. If a group of people come to you and say, we're really interested in having a water trail here, and they're willing to work on it, pull logs out of the stream if there's a blockage or something like that, or put up signs or do whatever, that's what keeps the water trail alive, is the interest in it. Also, local amenities, other things to do in the area around where the water trail is. That's also important. We have some just incredible places down in South Little Rock on the White River that would just, hundreds of miles of streams that you get in and paddle and be lost forever. But part of the beauty of that is its remoteness, but that's also kind of a drawback too into developing a water trail there. We want to do that eventually, but it's hard when you don't have restaurants and motels and and as many accesses as you would like in the area.
Thanks. Devlin?
All right. I think just about any clean body of water has the recreation potential, but a couple of important issues are accessibility and safety. I think the areas that are easily accessible tend to encourage proper use and perhaps discourage unauthorized roads and access paths. So those unauthorized accesses can negatively impact the natural resources. And of course, water safety is always important and always should be considered when maintaining the waterways and enhancing Arkansas's reputation, as a great place to live and to visit. So, having a great day on the water but returning home safely is what will encourage people to return to Arkansas and increase that image, positive image of the natural state.
These two have covered it really well. Any of you happen to try and buy a kayak during COVID the last couple years, or just like walk through a big box store? Cleaned out. People were buying boats. So the want to is there. Paddling sports are on the rise, especially kayaks and paddle boards. So people want to get out, and they come to Arkansas. Tourism is a big industry here. It creates lots of jobs. It generates a lot of income coming into this state. And again, we want folks, getting involved, learning about conservation and wildlife. So it takes a village, volunteers that can help make this happen. And I think it's really important that we maintain these and keep them looking nice. So when people come visit Arkansas or get out on some of these trails for the first time, they say, wow, and they should. We have trails in this state that meander by cypress trees that are pushing 1,000 years old. They were proper trees when Columbus landed. We have streams in the Ozarks that have ancient bluffs and, ancient people that lived along them. We have a real diverse, landscape with different types of paddling and waterways in the state. So yes, we need to let them shine.
Thanks. For my last planned question, I wanted to do something fun. I would like you to tell me a story about a time you've spent on one of your favorite Central Arkansas waterways, or if your story is more fun outside of Central Arkansas, we will make an allowance. And how did that experience shape you and affect your work in this area? And we'll start with Devlin.
All right. So personally, I don't tend to travel too far from home, but luckily the Willow Beach Park is just down the road from where I live. So I've spent some enjoyable early morning on a kayak out on the backwaters. Pretty calm out there. So that's where I enjoy spending time on the water. But I also recognize that everyone has their own style and preferences of outdoor recreation. So I think it's important that we make the variety of opportunities available when we manage these waterways, whether it's that secluded natural setting or a full hookup group campsite. That can all be a part of that recreational experience for the community. And to kind of sum it up, outdoor recreation and protecting the natural resources are just opportunities to improve the quality of life for our visitors and our surrounding communities.
Thanks. Kirsten?
So many good stories. Some of my most memorable things seem to be out on a canoe or on a waterway, but one fun one was on the Little Maumelle. If you've not been on the Little Maumelle, you can put in at Pinnacle Mountain at the state park and paddle down to the Two Rivers area. So I met a crew out there, our camera guys, and they were doing a short segment on things you can do around Central Arkansas. So we met out there early in the morning and they interviewed me. And they said, well, we're going to leave. I said, didn't you bring your fishing pole? Let's fish a little bit. They're like, nah, we're going back to the office. I said, well, I'm going to stay and fish for a little bit. So they left, and I was in my little red canoe and started fishing along the Little Maumelle and cast out my, I got to think about which lure it was, and a huge fish grabbed it and started dragging me. And I started, huge, finally jumped a huge gar that I had caught with my rebel crawdad, I believe, and drug me from tree to button bush to cypress knee, and it would jump up, and I'm screaming like a girl and trying to get my phone out because I wanted to try and document this since the dang videographer guys had just left. But anyway, and it occurred to me after all that was over, finally the line broke and we both lived and all was well, but it was a really epic outdoor experience. I thought, and I'm right here at home. I didn't have to travel, across the big water or, go to some Western National Park. You can have a big adventure right here in your backyard. Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I've always gotten my inspiration from outdoors somewhere, doing something. So, you know, I paint, and that's where I take all my inspiration from, is from so many beautiful outdoor places. And we moved to Arkansas many, many years ago, and I was doing whitewater paddling. My husband and I were both visiting all the whitewater streams and creeks, and I had decided that I wanted to paddle a small solo canoe and just take it easy. You know, my drug of choice is more serotonin than adrenaline, so I wanted something laid back and easy, and I started looking around, and there were all kinds of ads for water trails in other states like Alabama and Georgia and Florida, and I visited a few of those, and yes, they were beautiful as advertised. And then I heard about the big woods of Arkansas, but there were no trails. There was not any access that wasn't first known by hunters and fishermen, and I was just one person in a small solo canoe. So, but I really wanted to paddle over there, so I went over with some friends, and we found a place to get on to Bayou de View. And, you know, I had to keep picking my jaw up off the floor of the canoe because it was one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. Like Kirsten said, nearly 1,000-year-old trees, you know, just like stepping off into another world. All the birds and the wildlife that was there. The first thing I saw was a whole family of otters, and but the most impressive thing about DeView is these giant cypress trees. Well, a friend of mine and I decided that we would go check out another out-of-state trail in North Carolina, and I had kind of cruised around the internet and to find you know, kind of models for what a trail might look like in Arkansas. And so we went to North Carolina, and one of the campsites, they had platforms that you could camp on in the swamp, and one of them was called Cypress Cathedral. And I thought, oh, that, you know, that's got to be just fabulous. So the second night we pull into Cypress Cathedral, and there were some beautiful, nice cypress trees there. But I kept looking around going, where are the big trees? You know, they don't have any that compare to what we have in Arkansas. And, you know, it was really at that moment that I thought, we really have to show what we have in Arkansas to everybody. You know, you've just got to see it. You got to see it. And I came back. I had been working a little bit with the refuge, and they were really interested in doing trails. And the guy that I was working with had left to a different place. He worked with the refuge. So I was kind of casting around looking for somebody to help out with this idea of creating trails, and thought it was a great idea, and went to Flush Creek, and there was this person there named Kirsten Bartlow with the Game and Fish, and she had already been thinking about along the same lines as I had, so we got to talking and created our first water trail together at Watershed Bayou, and the rest is history.
That's a very good story. Thanks. I'm going to do my little spiel again. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Issues That Matter, Protecting Arkansas's Waterways, a deep dive into adventure. This series is presented by the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and KUAR FM 89.1. This virtual forum is being recorded for broadcast and will air at a later date on KUAR. So we're going to move into audience questions now, and I've gotten, I think there's probably a few more. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we'll start with the ones I have on paper, and then I'll move to the ones from Zoom. So our first one is from Laura Bridges. She wonders, Colorado and other states divert water from the Arkansas River for agriculture. As this increases, how will it affect the flow of the river and its streams and tributaries? And anyone's welcome to jump in. No order here.
It's not my area, I don't know.
Everybody's looking at
And we've stumped them.
I don't know.
Well, that's okay.
Well, it can, you know. There have been some issues on the White River about diverting water for agriculture. And it becomes a big, sticky environmental problem with lots of people on both sides. And I'm not aware of what the status is of that project is right now. But we don't have near the problems yet. Now, we could in the future, and because Arkansas is water rich, and we're going to have to, and we really are going to have to prepare for what we're going to do when other states come their hands out looking for water. But it's not happening. It hasn't happened yet.
Does anyone else have an additional comment on that one?
What Debbie said.
Okay.
That's a good answer.
And Nader asks, what is on your short list of great water trails that most people may not know about?
Well, I think, one that we've been bragging about quite a bit here tonight is the Viability Water Trail, which is in Dagmar Wildlife Management Area, just east of here, about an hour in Brinkley. So that's where the ivory-billed woodpecker search happened back in 2004, 2005. So depending on where you stand on that, whether you're a believer or not, you can go out there and look for an ivory-billed or just see where that magnificent bird lives. So Biodeview is, I think, on top of our list of you should really check it out. A neat little gym nearby is the Grassy Lake Water Trail, which is in Bell Slough Wildlife Management Area in Mayflower. So that's just, 20 minutes down the road. It's a loop trail. It's flooded timber, so it's not often you can paddle a loop.
Drive up and paddle around and come right back where you started.
Yeah, and these can be seasonal, so be sure to check out on Game and Fish Commission's website. Learn more. They can be rain dependent, and you need to check on that. But for instance, that little Grassy Lake Water Trail, it has just tremendous wildlife viewing. If you want to see beavers and herons that are nesting in their rookery, which is where they have their young, those are two really neat ones that aren't far away.
In addition to those, I would suggest Watershed Bayou, which was our first trail. It's 45 minutes east of Little Rock. And the best time to go, you can go, it's always there. You don't have to worry too much about the water levels because it almost always has enough water to paddle. And I especially like to paddle it when the water is low because it's got these monstrous trees with how cypresses have a wide base at the bottom and lots of cypress knees and stuff. And it's really impressive to see some of the trees there when the water is low.
And Carol Young asks, do you think that the state legislature supports your efforts?
Yes. Thanks, legislators.
Yes. But that reminds me that I need to ask one more thing. I can tell you one more thing about one thing you can do is fairly often when budgets come to the state legislature, go in and support our agencies, because a lot of times it's possible for them to lose funding that they really, really need. So, get a hold of your legislatures and tell them you appreciate the natural world and you want the agencies that work on those to have enough for what they need to do.
Great, thank you. So there is a question in Zoom that says, has anyone ever, oh, sorry, that I misread that completely. Has anything been done to prevent future atrocities of the nature of the hog farm in the Buffalo River watershed? I'm guessing they're referring to maybe legislative action or something along those lines, or rulemaking.
Not anything further since the end of that, but that what happened with the hog farm is probably a deterrent to a lot of any future activity, at least for some years. But it's another thing that we really need to keep an eye on, and we also need to keep an eye on operations like that moving into other areas and other watersheds that we don't want to be contaminated also.
Does anyone else have a comment on that? Okay. And I think this will be our last question. Can you address the impact of water recreation on Arkansas's economy?
I sure wish we had someone from Arkansas Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism here, because they keep those numbers close in their pocket. I don't, any of us could Google it right now. It's, at one time was claimed it was the number 2 behind agriculture, industry in the state. I don't know the specifics, but it's lots and lots of money that we bring in through recreation and tourism in the state. So.
It's a lot of money, and it promises to be even more.
Great. And there were a few comments I just wanted to share. One says, if you share the waterways now, you have to protect them in the future. And another viewer wanted to thank Game and Fish for Grassy Lake near Mayflower. It is awesome kayaking. Yeah. I think that's a good place to end our panel. I want to thank you all so much again for being here. And I wanted to remind folks that this is a part of a series. And that our next panel will be on September 1st at 6:30, and it is called Protecting Arkansas's Waterways, Hydrating the Harvest, and I'll be on agriculture in Arkansas. And on behalf of the Central Arkansas Library System, the League of Women Voters of Pulaski County, and KUAR 89.1, thank you and good night.
Stand up? Or? Okay.